I didn't lose my family because I did something wrong. I lost them because a lie was more convenient than accountability. After my father's death, my stepmother rewrote our home, my role in it, and finally my identity, until I became the problem she needed to remove. The first thing I noticed wasn't the silence. It was the way my name stopped being used. People still talked to me, asked if I'd eaten, told me to take my shoes off, reminded me to lock the door. But my name disappeared, like it had been erased from the house. I became her, or worse, nothing at all. Did she finish the dishes? Tell her not to stay out late. Watch her. Always her. Always said low, like a warning. At first, I thought I'd done something wrong. I replayed every conversation in my head while lying awake at night, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to my ceiling from when I was 12. I tried to remember a moment I'd crossed a line, a joke that landed wrong, a look held too long, something, anything that explained why my stepmother's smile no longer reached her eyes. My father had been dead 3 years by then, long enough for grief to settle into routine, long enough for my stepmother, Karen, to rearrange the house until there was no visible proof he'd ever lived there. His photos moved to the garage, his jackets donated, his coffee mug, the chipped blue one, gone. She said it was healing. I learned early that healing in this house meant erasing. My stepfather, Mark, came later. He moved in quietly like a guest who never asked permission but never quite left either. He was polite, distant, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but not his eyes. I tried to stay out of his way. I thought that was respect. I was wrong. The morning everything shifted, I was standing in the kitchen holding that blue mug, the one Karen had missed. I'd found it pushed behind paint cans in the garage, dusty but intact. It smelled like old coffee in memory. I didn't even drink from it. I just held it. Karen watched me from the doorway. She didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she just looked at me like she'd caught me doing something indecent. "Where'd you get that?" she asked. "Garage. I didn't know it was. You shouldn't be touching things that don't belong to you." It felt sharp, personal, but I nodded anyway. I always nodded. That night, my bedroom door stayed open. The next day, my phone went missing. The day after that, Karen asked me, casually, falsely sweet, why I'd been hanging around the living room so much lately. "I live here," I said, confused. She tilted her head, studied me. "You know what I mean." I didn't, but I felt it, that invisible shift, like suddenly I was being watched from inside my own skin. Mark stopped making eye contact. If I entered a room, he found a reason to leave. When our shoulders brushed once in the hallway, Karen slammed a cabinet so hard it rattled the walls. "You don't need to be that close," she snapped. I stood there, heart pounding, heat crawling up my neck. I wasn't. "Don't argue," she said. "It makes you look guilty." Guilty of what? I didn't ask. I should have. But in this family, questions were dangerous. Questions meant attitude, and attitude meant consequences. At school, things started changing too. Friends went quiet when I approached. Teachers watched me longer than necessary. Someone had written "homewrecker" on Sharpie on my locker, the letters crooked like they'd been written in a rush. I stared at it for a long time before wiping it away with my sleeve. I told myself it was nothing. Teen drama. Rumors happened. They always burned out. This one didn't. It followed me home. Karen stopped letting me sit in the living room. "Go to your room," she'd say, eyes freaking toward Mark. "You make people uncomfortable." Once I heard her crying in their bedroom late at night. Her voice was broken, raw. Mark murmured something I couldn't hear. Then her voice rose, sharp, desperate. "I won't be humiliated in my own house." The word humiliated lodged in my chest. The next morning, she didn't look at me at all. At dinner that night, she finally said it. She didn't shout. She didn't even sound angry. She sounded tired, like she was the real victim here. "I know what's been going on. I'm not stupid," she said, stirring her food she hadn't touched. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What?" She laughed softly. "Don't insult me." Mark stared at his plate. My heart started racing. "I don't know what you think." "You've been inappropriate," she said, calm, precise, surgical, "with my husband." The room tilted. I felt like I'd been slapped without being touched. "That's not. I would never." "Don't," she snapped. "Don't lie on top of it." I looked at Mark, finally, really looked at him. He didn't defend me. He didn't deny it. He just sat there, silent, letting the lie breathe. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough to let the truth leak in. I was expendable. The lie wasn't about me. It was about protecting adults who didn't want to face themselves, and I was about to pay for it with everything. Once the word affair left my stepmother's mouth, it didn't belong to her anymore. It slipped through cracks, through silence, through people who didn't ask questions because questions were inconvenient. It traveled faster than the truth ever could because it asked nothing of anyone except belief. The next morning, Karen drove me to school like nothing had happened. No yelling, no punishment, just that same quiet distance, her hands tight on the steering wheel, jaw clenched. Before I got out of the car, she said, "I expect you to behave yourself today." I stared at her. I always do. She finally looked at me then, eyes cold. That's not what people are saying. People. The word hit harder than the accusation itself. By lunch, I knew exactly who those people were. My usual table was full, but there was no space for me. My best friend, Leela, didn't look up when I stood there with my tray. Another girl leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Leela's shoulders stiffened. "Can I sit?" I asked. Leela hesitated, just a second, but it was enough. We're kinda talking," she said, not meeting my eyes. "About me." I ate in the bathroom that day, sitting on the closed toilet lid, the smell of disinfectant burning my nose. Someone had written "slut" on the inside of the stall door. I didn't know if it was meant for me, but it felt like it was. By the end of the week, teachers stopped calling on me in class. The guidance counselor asked if everything at home was okay. Her voice loaded, her eyes too knowing. A boy I'd never spoken to leaned close as I passed him in the hall and said, "So you're into older guys, huh?" I went home shaking. Karen was waiting. She'd invited my aunt over, my cousin too. They sat on the couch like it was an intervention. Karen perched on the armchair, hands folded, face calm, serene even, like she'd rehearsed this. I stood there, backpack still on, heart pounding. "We're just worried about you," my aunt said gently. "Worried about what?" My voice came out thin. Karen sighed. "This behavior, it's not healthy. It's not appropriate." "What behavior?" I asked. I was begging now. I could hear it. She looked at the others, then back at me. "Don't make me spell it out." "Say it." I wanted her to say it again. Say it so I could fight it, so I could tear it apart. Instead, my aunt spoke. "Honey, if something happened, if you were confused—" "I wasn't," I said too fast. "Nothing happened. Ever." No one contradicted me. No one agreed either. Silence sat heavy in the room, thick and sticky, the kind that doesn't wait for truth, the kind that decides for you. That night, Karen took my door off its hinges. "Transparency," she said. "You've lost the right to privacy." I slept with the lights on, my stomach twisted into knots. Every sound in the house made my skin crawl. I hated myself for feeling guilty when I hadn't done anything wrong. Hated that my first instinct was to apologize. I tried anyway. I cornered Mark in the garage one afternoon, my hands shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. "You have to tell her. You have to tell them it's not true." He did look at me. "It's complicated." "No, it's not," I said. "It's a lie." He finally met my eyes then, and what I saw there broke something else in me. Not desire, not guilt, fear. "Your stepmother's been through a lot," he said. "She's sensitive. You need to stop pushing." "So you're just going to let them think this about me?" He shrugged. "People think what they think." People. There it was again. "Karen stopped letting me attend family gatherings. For your own good," she said. "Things are tense right now." At school, the rumor grew teeth. Someone told the principal. I was pulled out of class and questioned like a suspect. My answers were written down, filed, stored. My mother, my real mother, who lived 2 states away and sent birthday cards like obligations, called once. Karen had already spoken to her. "I don't know what's going on with you," my mother said over the phone, her voice disappointed, distant. "But I raised you better than this." I pressed my forehead to the wall, my vision blurring. "I didn't do anything." She sighed. "That's what they all say." That night, I cried until my throat burned. quietly, carefully. I learned to cry without sound. The house felt hostile now, every room charged. Karen watched me like a warden. Mark avoided me entirely. If we crossed paths, he flinched like I was dangerous. Once I overheard Karen on the phone. "I had to protect my marriage," she said. "You understand that, right?" Protect? By sacrificing me. The final straw came in spring. I came home to my suitcase sitting by the door. Karen stood nearby, arms crossed. "You need space," she said. "We all do." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "Your aunts offered to take you in, for a while." "For a while," I repeated. Mark stood behind her, silent as ever. I looked at them both, really looked, and I understood. This wasn't about an affair. It was about convenience. I was the loose end, the reminder, the thing that didn't fit neatly into their story of a respectable marriage and a clean life. Sending me away fixed everything. At my aunt's house, things weren't better, just quieter. Doors closed when I entered rooms, conversations paused. I became the cautionary tale whispered about when relatives thought I couldn't hear. I stopped correcting them. What was the point? Somewhere between surviving and disappearing, something inside me hardened. I started writing everything down. Dates, words, looks, contradictions. I didn't know why at first. I just knew I needed proof. If not for them, then for myself. Years passed like that. I graduated early, moved out, worked nights, studied days. I carried the lie with me like a shadow, always just behind my shoulder. People remembered. They always remembered. But I did too. And one day, while cleaning out an old email account, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A message Karen had sent Mark months before the accusation. Angry, accusing, afraid. "If you don't end it, I will. Not with me, with someone else." That's when the lie finally cracked wide open. And for the first time since that word ruined my life, I wasn't afraid. I was furious. Anger didn't come all at once. At first, it showed up as insomnia. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling of my tiny studio apartment, listening to the radiator click and pop like it was trying to tell me something. My body was exhausted, but my brain wouldn't shut up. It kept replaying moments I tried to bury. The way Karen's voice softened when she lied. The way Mark's silence did more damage than shouting ever could. I kept thinking, they really let the world believe that about me. Not strangers, not random people. My family. For a long time, survival was my only goal. I worked 2 jobs, one at a diner where men called me sweetheart like it was my name, another cleaning offices at night when the city felt hollow and honest. I paid my bills on time. I kept my head down. I told myself I didn't care what anyone thought anymore. That was a lie too. The rumor followed me like a bad smell. I'd run into people from my old town at grocery stores or gas stations, and I'd see it flash across their faces. Recognition, curiosity, judgment. Nobody ever asked me directly. They didn't need to. The story had already been written. I started therapy because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. On the first day, the therapist asked why I was there, and I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. I cried instead. Ugly, chest-breaking sobs that left me dizzy and ashamed. When I finally spoke, it all spilled out wrong, out of order, fractured. The accusation, the silence, the way my name had been erased before my body ever left the house. She listened. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said quietly, "What happened to you was psychological violence." That word, violence, hit me harder than the lie ever had, because suddenly I wasn't weak for being broken. I was injured. Healing wasn't pretty. It was slow and annoying and full of setbacks. Some days I felt strong. Other days I couldn't leave my bed because a random memory, Karen folding laundry, Mark clearing his throat, would knock the air out of me. But something shifted. I stopped asking myself what I'd done wrong and started asking why they'd needed me to be wrong in the first place. I went back through everything I'd saved. Notebooks, old emails, texts I'd screenshotted and forgotten about. I laid it all out on my kitchen table one Sunday morning, coffee going cold beside me. Patterns emerged. Dates didn't line up. Accusations came right after fights between Karen and Mark. Her breakdowns always followed moments where he'd been distant with her, not with me. Then I found more. An old phone bill Karen had forgotten to shred, repeated late-night calls to a number I didn't recognize, social media accounts she didn't know were public, photos she'd been tagged in and never removed. And then the final confirmation. A woman messaged me. She didn't start with an apology, she didn't start with kindness, she started with fear. "I don't know how to say this," the message read, "but I think we were both lied to." Her name was Melissa. She'd been seeing Mark for over a year before Karen accused me. Karen had found out, Karen had panicked, Karen had chosen me. I stared at my phone for a long time after reading that. My hands didn't shake this time, my chest didn't tighten. I felt clear. The lie wasn't an accident, it wasn't insecurity gone too far, it was strategy. And suddenly, everything made sense. The surveillance, the sudden rules, the urgency to isolate me before I could question anything. Karen hadn't just needed someone to blame, she'd needed someone believable. A teenage girl, quiet, already half invisible. Perfect. I didn't confront them right away. I didn't call, I didn't post anything online, I didn't scream. I learned. I met with a lawyer in a small office that smelled like paper and burnt coffee. He listened carefully, flipping through my documents, nodding slowly. "This is defamation," he said, "and it's not small." I felt my stomach flip. "I don't want revenge," I said automatically. He looked at me over his glasses. "Wanting the truth on record isn't revenge." I thought about that on the walk home, about how many nights I'd spent wishing someone, anyone, had defended me, how many versions of myself I'd lost trying to be palatable to people who'd already decided I was disposable. This wasn't about hurting them, this was about refusing to carry their lie any longer. The legal process was brutal. Karen cried in her deposition, real tears, shaking voice. She talked about feeling threatened, about a young girl who didn't understand boundaries. She never said my name, not once. Mark tried to downplay everything, claimed confusion, claimed memory issues, claimed I'd misinterpreted his silence. But evidence doesn't care about feelings. The emails, the phone records, Melissa's testimony, timelines that proved the accusation against me had been impossible. Slowly, carefully, the narrative began to crack. People started reaching out. An old teacher, a cousin who'd never said a word, even Leela, my former best friend. She wrote, "I always wondered. I'm sorry I didn't say anything." I didn't reply. The case went public. Local news picked it up, not sensationally, just enough. Defamation lawsuit filed against local couple. Karen's name printed in black and white, Mark's too. The same relatives who'd gone silent years ago suddenly remembered my number. I ignored them all. On the day of the hearing, I sat in the courtroom feeling oddly calm. Karen wouldn't look at me. Mark stared straight ahead, jaw tight. When the judge asked if either party had something to say before the ruling, Karen finally turned. Her eyes searched my face, not for forgiveness, for escape. I met her gaze and felt nothing. Not hatred, not satisfaction, just distance. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking. I was waiting. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. Not silent, just muted. Like everyone inside it understood that something fragile was about to be broken, and no one wanted to be the one who made the noise. Karen sat at the defense table with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. She wore the same soft blue sweater she'd always chosen when she wanted to look harmless, maternal, misunderstood. Mark sat beside her, shoulders stiff, eyes fixed straight ahead like if he didn't look at the damage, it wouldn't be real. I sat behind my lawyer, my back straight, my palms resting open on my knees. That alone felt like a victory. When the judge began reading the findings, Karen's breathing changed. I could hear it, quick, shallow pulls of air that didn't quite reach her lungs. The words came calmly, methodically. No drama, no raised voice. But each sentence dismantled the lie piece by piece. The accusation had been false. The statements made to relatives, school officials, and community members were unsubstantiated. The narrative had caused severe and lasting reputational harm. Defamation. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. Not silent, just muted. Like everyone inside it understood that something fragile was about to be broken, and no one wanted to be the one who made the noise. Karen sat at the defense table with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. She wore the same soft blue sweater she'd always chosen when she wanted to look harmless, maternal, misunderstood. Mark sat beside her, shoulders stiff, eyes fixed straight ahead like if he didn't look at the damage, it wouldn't be real. I sat behind my lawyer, my back straight, my palms resting open on my knees. That alone felt like a victory. When the judge began reading the findings, Karen's breathing changed. I could hear it, quick, shallow pulls of air that didn't quite reach her lungs. The words came calmly, methodically. No drama, no raised voice. But each sentence dismantled the lie piece by piece. The accusation had been false. The statements made to relatives, school officials, and community members were unsubstantiated. The narrative had caused severe and lasting reputational harm. Defamation. When the judge ordered a formal public retraction and apology, written, signed, and submitted to the same institutions the rumor had reached, I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't known was still clenched. Karen made a sound then. Small, broken. Mark finally turns toward me. Our eyes met for a split second. He looked older, smaller, like a man who'd spent too long hiding behind silence and had finally run out of places to stand. The apology wasn't immediate. It took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of local gossip spinning itself into knots. 2 weeks of relatives calling and texting, their messages clumsy with regret. We didn't know. We were just worried. You have to understand how it looked. I deleted them all. The apology came in the form of a letter published on the school district website and circulated among extended family. Karen's words were careful, legally polished, stripped of emotion. But the truth was there. Clear. Undeniable. The affair hadn't been mine. The accusations had been false. The harm had been real. I printed the letter and folded it neatly, then slid it into a box with my old notebooks, the ones filled with dates, phrases, moments I'd once thought no one would ever care about. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. A month later, Karen asked to see me. I agreed, against my better judgment, not because I owed her anything, but because I wanted to see who she was without the lie protecting her. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our towns. Neutral ground, public, safe. She looked smaller than I remembered, her hair grayer, her eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with consequence. She cried almost immediately. I was scared. I thought I was losing everything. I stirred my coffee, watched the cream swirl in slow, perfect patterns. So you gave me up instead? She flinched. I didn't think it would go that far, she whispered. That's the thing. It always does. She tried to apologize again, this time without a script. She talked about panic and shame and how she'd convinced herself she was protecting her marriage. I listened, and when she finished, I said, "You didn't protect anything. You just taught everyone how easy it was to destroy me." Her mouth opened, closed. There was nothing left to say. Mark never asked to meet. That felt right. In the months that followed, my life settled into something unfamiliar. Peace. Not happiness, not all the time, but steadiness, the kind that doesn't disappear the moment someone raises their voice. I moved apartments, started a new job, made friends who knew nothing about my past and didn't need to. Sometimes people still recognized my name, but now, when they did, their expressions changed differently. Not with judgment, with discomfort. The lie had come back to its owners. One evening, I went back to the old house for the last time. Karen had moved out, Mark too. The place was being sold, empty, echoing. I stood in the kitchen where it all started, the late afternoon light slanting across the counters. I imagined my younger self there, barefoot, holding a mug that smelled of memory, trying to understand why love had suddenly turned sharp. "I'm okay now," I whispered, not to the house, to her. I walked out without looking back. Some people think revenge has to be loud, explosive, cruel. Mine was quieter. I lived, I told the truth, I refused to carry shame that wasn't mine, and in doing that, I took back everything they tried to steal. My name, my voice, my future. They underestimated me, and they'll have to live with that for the rest of their lives.